Congressman Duncan Hunter back in court. How it will take nearly a year before his campaign spending trial gets started. And farewell to a president. The casket of George H.W. Bush arrives in Washington. Political leaders eulogize the former commander-in-chief.
Fossil fuels is a huge polluter, and this pollution creates greenhouse gases, and this is why we have this increased heat all over the world. If they don't acknowledge that, then there must be something a little off.
A major climate conference is underway, while California's former governor says the U.S. can still make progress despite President Trump's policies.
And I wanted to convey a sense of lightness and hope. And I select the pieces that have a vision of light into this album.
And San Diego classical pianist Ji-Yoon Kim talks with KPBS about her new album and what it's like to perform around the world. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. A trial date has been set for indicted Congressman Duncan Hunter. It will be 9 months before he faces multiple federal charges related to the alleged personal use of campaign money. KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar was in the courtroom where Hunter and his wife appeared earlier today.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How do you feel about today? How do you feel about the upcoming trial?
That was the most you heard from Representative Duncan Hunter, surrounded by a few hecklers shouting at the apparently re-elected representative. Hunter leads his Democratic challenger by just under 4 points. Monday, prosecutors and defense attorneys for both Hunter and his wife Margaret agreed to a September 10th, 2019 trial date.
Surprisingly, members of Congress can serve when they're under trial, even after they've been convicted, and could actually serve while in jail. So there's no automatic prohibition on serving in Congress.
Hunter and his wife face felony charges for allegedly spending around $250,000 in campaign funds on personal expenses. Analysts say if convicted, the House would have to vote to expel Hunter if he doesn't decide to step down on his own.
Even when Republicans were running the House, he refused to step down from his committee positions. It took pressure from his Speaker, Paul Ryan, to do that. There's no way that he's going to cave into pressure from a Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, to do that. So I think it would take both a conviction and an expulsion vote for Duncan Hunter to leave Congress before the next election.
Prosecutors say they expect the trial to take around 3 weeks. The congressman will have his day in court more than a year after he was initially indicted. Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
You're a scumbag, Duncan! You're a scumbag!
The Supreme Court has decided not to hear a border wall case. Environmental groups are trying to stop the construction of a new wall proposed by President Trump. They claim environmental reviews were improperly waived, but a federal judge in San Diego has ruled against that argument. The Supreme Court's decision means the lower court's rulings will stand. Border wall funding is likely to be a sticking point in negotiations to avoid a government shutdown later this month. The body of former President George H.W. Bush is lying in state tonight at the U.S. Capitol after a solemn send-off today in Houston. This was the start of a series of tributes and ceremonies leading up to Wednesday's funeral. Air Force One was sent by the Trump administration to bring Bush's casket to Washington. The plane was renamed Special Air Mission 41 in recognition of the 41st president. Upon arrival in Washington, a service was held and Vice President Mike Pence delivered a eulogy.
In 1988, he made history again when George Herbert Walker Bush was elected in a landslide as the 41st President of the United States of America, becoming the first sitting Vice President to win the presidency in more than 150 years of our history. He served during an uncertain time in the world, made momentous by his leadership. President Bush oversaw the fall of the Soviet Union, the crumbling of the Berlin Wall, and under his leadership, America won the Cold War. He took our nation to war to repel aggression in the Persian Gulf, and through his leadership as Commander-in-Chief and the brilliance of our armed forces, the United States won a decisive victory. When President George Herbert Walker Bush left office, he left America and the world more peaceful, prosperous, and secure.
Wednesday, a funeral service will be held at the National Cathedral in Washington. President Trump, past presidents, and world leaders are expected to attend. Special live coverage will be provided by PBS and NPR. Beyond taking lives and destroying homes, California's wildfires have also produced a major amount of carbon emissions. Analysis by the U.S. Geological Survey shows 68 million tons of carbon dioxide came from wildfires this year. Scientists say that's equal to the production of a year's worth of electricity for the entire state. The changing planet is one of the focuses of a 2-week climate conference that started today in Poland. The event is organized by the United Nations and includes delegates from nearly 200 countries. Among the attendees is former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. He says the U.S. is largely sticking to the Paris Climate Accord despite the policies of President Donald Trump.
Yes, we have a Meshuggah leader in Washington. That is not in, that is out. But remember that America is more than just Washington or one leader. So I'm asking you and begging you that next year on COP25, let's have those local leaders come here and be part of a big conference like this where they can talk to you directly. And if you do that, I promise you, I'll be back.
President Trump will not attend the climate summit in Poland. Associated Press reporter Tracy Brown tells us how the world is trying to work on a solution with a lack of U.S. leadership on the issue.
As world leaders are set to gather in Poland to fine-tune the Paris Climate Agreement, President Donald Trump is continuing his push to dismantle Obama administration efforts to rein in coal, oil and gas emissions. He's putting aside warnings about the devastating impact of climate change.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
The U.S. is far from being the driving force it was during the Paris climate talks under President Barack Obama.
And when it comes to climate change, that hour is almost upon us.
The euphoria of 2015 has given way to sober realization that getting an agreement amongst almost 200 countries will be challenging, as evidenced by Trump's decision to pull the United States out of the Paris Accord.
The Paris Climate Accord is simply the latest example of Washington entering into an agreement that disadvantages the United States to the exclusive benefit of other countries.
An email obtained by the Associated Press under the Freedom of Information Act shows the administration withdrew from the Paris Agreement with no clear climate policy in place.
It was a huge sort of punch in the gut for a number of countries because they had worked from a world where the U.S. was at the center of these negotiations to now being sort of a sideshow.
The initial shock of the abrupt U.S. retreat galvanizing international support for climate efforts.
And when President Trump rejected that, it really brought the rest of the world together with new will to take action.
But the Trump administration's retreat may show governments and companies they can ignore global climate concerns and not be held accountable.
There's some signs in Australia. The new government in Brazil is obviously not a strong climate policy expert, but big countries like China and India and Europe have said, in essence, we're going to keep plowing ahead and we're going to even go faster and take up a kind of stronger role in leading this thing.
The State Department, in an email, notes that the U.S. is still sending a delegation to the Poland climate talks, despite pulling out of the Paris Accord. Tracy Brown, Associated Press.
Good evening. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. Today, not bad. And it's going to be pretty nice tonight and tomorrow as well. But notice all this moisture here off on the Pacific. That's going to be a storm heading into California. And boy, are we going to see some rain. from that. Not yet. For tonight, it's quiet. Oceanside at 39 degrees. Chula Vista at 47 and Mount Laguna sitting at 33 degrees. Tonight in the metro area, expect to see patchy clouds. 51 degrees for the low temperature. Here's Tuesday, a low pressure system. It is creeping to the east. The rain's going to start in northern California. Along the coast, it will be heaviest. We will see mountain snow, and eventually it's going to drive down to the south, and we are going to see some heavy rain as well. Oceanside at 69 degrees. San Diego tomorrow sunny, 70 degrees, and Ramona sitting at 69. Here's the futurecast. This is Wednesday, 6 p.m. around dinner time. Notice we're already seeing showers in the interior areas, still dry right along the coast, but as we move forward, you could see everyone is going to get some rain. This is Wednesday in through Thursday. Could even hear some thunder and lightning storms popping up with that, mainly Thursday. And here's the future precipitation, and it looks like San Diego at this point could get just below 2 inches. Chula Vista coming in close, and places like Borrego Springs even getting nearly a half an inch of rain. So it's been awfully dry. We could certainly use this wet weather. Taking a look at late week, we dry out. Back to our typical pattern. Temperatures will be around average, and we'll have plenty of sunshine. So Tuesday along the coast looking good, 69 degrees. Gets a bit cooler Wednesday with that storm moving in. We'll see pouring rain Wednesday. Thursday could see a thunderstorm popping up with all that rain. Drier for the weekend. Friday and Saturday sunny, and temperatures are getting a bit warmer, back up to those upper 60s. Inland, we'll see the rain again Wednesday, Thursday. We'll see downpours. It will be cooler along with some storms. But again, Friday and Saturday, warmer and sunny. In the mountains, we'll see that rain mainly in the afternoon, spotty showers through Thursday, and in the deserts, even getting their share of that wet weather Wednesday and Thursday. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra. Back to you.
A man who pleaded guilty to murder as a teenager more than 20 years ago has received a recommendation for parole. KPBS reporter Tara Minto says while the San Diego County District Attorney didn't take an official position on the parole of Tony Hicks, Summer Steffen has raised concerns.
The letter points to a doctor's August assessment that found Hicks was a moderate risk for violence and couldn't confirm he'd respond to parole conditions. DA Summer Steffen also noted Hicks's previous history of violence in prison, but said his young age at the time of the murder and broad community support should also be considered. A lawyer for Hicks did not return calls seeking comment, but the Washington Post reported Hicks apologized at his hearing and took responsibility for his violent past. The paper said the state panel accepted his apology and noted his positive behavior in recent years. Hicks has also repeatedly expressed remorse for the murder and said he hopes to have a positive impact on society. Hicks shot and killed Tariq Khamisa in 1995. Khamisa's father forgave Hicks and advocated for his release. He hopes to hire Hicks as a spokesman for his foundation that deters kids from violence. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
A strange phone call or an email can often lead to a scam, especially during the holiday season. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman tells us how police and business groups are trying to help people spot the warning signs.
Most people have experienced a scam call before. A random number calls telling you your credit card bill is overdue or your auto insurance is expired. And unless you act now, you're in trouble.
A lot of the scams will play on the urgency of your response. We need you to respond now, to pay your debt now. No one will ever call you with such great urgency that you can't hang up and call them back 10 minutes later.
District Attorney Summer Steffen says you might notice an increase in scams online and over the phone around this time of year.
The holiday season is really high volume for theft and scams because people are busy and the scammers know that people are distracted, they're running around, they're shopping. So if people get emails from someone or a company that they're not aware of, just don't open it.
Steffen says the elderly and immigrants are often more vulnerable to scams. If you think you've been a victim of a scam or identity theft, the DA's office has set up a website with more information at catchteam.org. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
A new session of the California legislature begins today with Democratic supermajorities in both chambers. Capitol Public Radio's Ben Adler has more on the changes in Sacramento.
The blue wave that propelled California Democrats to big wins in Congress also cost Republicans 3 state Senate seats and either 5 or 6 assembly seats, pending the outcome of one last uncalled race in San Diego County. Democrats will outnumber the GOP 29-11 in the Senate. That's their largest majority since 1962, other than a brief stretch a few years ago when the legislature was mostly out of session. And in the Assembly, Democrats will hold either 60 or 61 seats, 3/4 of the lower chamber and Democrats' largest margin since 1883. Today's inauguration is also an opportunity for lawmakers to mingle with California's governor-elect, as the current lieutenant governor, Gavin Newsom, is the president of the state Senate and will preside over the chamber's inaugural session. Newsom will be sworn in on January 7th. At the state capitol, I'm Ben Adler.
California's high cost of living is a point of focus for the new legislature. When it comes to housing, some groups are saying yes in my backyard. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen spoke with the president and CEO of California YIMBY about finding solutions.
Brian Hanlon, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me here.
So for anyone who's listening who's not really familiar with what the YIMBY movement is, what's it all about?
The YIMBY movement is a group of people that welcome more neighbors into their communities, that believe that California should be for everyone, whether you're a migrant from Ohio, from El Salvador, or if you're a native San Diegan. Everyone should be able to achieve their full potential here in California, have access to good quality schools, access to good jobs, and crucially, be able to live in safe, secure, affordable housing.
So what does that mean in terms of policy? And tell me about what your organization, California YIMBY, is doing.
Sure. So California YIMBY is a relatively new statewide housing advocacy organization that works to change state law in order to end the housing crisis. And so we believe that an all of the above solution is necessary. So we need to, one, reform our outdated zoning laws that make building apartment buildings and condos illegal in the vast majority of California urban neighborhoods. We need to increase funding and support for people experiencing homelessness and for very low-income Californians. We need to reform the housing approval process, which right now you might think that if a person who wants to build, say, a 4-unit building, it complies with all the local rules and they submit it, well, that could be the beginning of a years-long process. And that makes housing much, much more expensive to build, and we just get a lot less of it.
Your organization sponsored a bill earlier this year that got a lot of attention, SB 827. It would have required cities to upzone land for housing around public transit centers. That bill, despite all the attention that it got, died in its first committee hearing, although the author, Senator Scott Wiener, has promised to bring it back in a new form. Mm-hmm. What did your organization or did the YIMBY movement learn from the fight over that bill, and what are you going to be doing going forward in bringing it back?
Well, I think one of the things that we learned is there really is a large appetite for big change in California. We are in a crisis, and in a crisis, you need to take bold, decisive action to address the root cause of the problems. The horrendous fires that we've seen recently that have destroyed thousands of homes, that have displaced thousands more. This is unfortunately going to be the new normal in California. We need to rethink, where are we building homes? Are we building enough homes for all Californians in existing urban areas that are not prone to these types of catastrophes? So we learned there's a lot of support. That said, we learned and sort of knew there's a lot of opposition to changing the status quo. This is going to be a hard problem to solve. It took us decades to get into this housing mess, and it's going to take us some time to get out of it.
You held a policy conference here in San Diego over the weekend. Is this something that your organization wants to do more of, more local organizing?
One, absolutely, but we want to make sure that we're working with and empowering any existing local YIMBY organizations that might be there. So for instance, here in San Diego, we partnered with the San Diego YIMBY Dems. So this was our third policy conference, and the point of them is really to get feedback from YIMBYs throughout the state, better understand the the issues that are confronting their communities. Is there state legislation that might help them in their own local organizing and advocacy? How do we need to better state legislation in a state as big as California so that it really does address the needs of all Californians?
Brian Hanlon, president of California YIMBY, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, the nation bids farewell to the 41st President, George H.W. Bush. It's coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
For the second straight year, the Aztecs are going to Texas for their bowl game. On December 19th, SDSU will play the Ohio Bobcats for the Frisco Bowl outside of Dallas. Kickoff is scheduled for 5 p.m. Pacific time. The game will air on ESPN. The Aztecs finished the regular season with a 7-5 record. This is SDSU's 9th straight year playing in a bowl game. Here in San Diego, the matchup is set for the Holiday Bowl. This year, the game will be played on New Year's Eve. The Northwestern Wildcats will take on the Utah Utes. Both teams are nationally ranked. Jin Yoon Kim is a classical pianist from San Diego who started playing in Korea at 4. She will mark the release of her new album, Over and Above and Beyond, with a performance at the Scripps Research Institute on December 9th. Kim spoke with KPBS's Midday Edition host, Jade Hyman, about her music.
Ji-Yoon Kim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so tell us about the inspiration behind your new album, Over, Above, and Beyond.
Yes, for this particular album, I was imagining I'm flying over the horizon, over, above, beyond, and I asked listeners to fly with me. And we selected pieces like inspiring for the flight, and I wanted to convey a sense of lightness and hope. And I selected pieces that have a vision of flight into this album.
So you're really taking them on a journey through this.
Exactly.
So I noticed there's a listening manual that comes with the album. How do you want people to really enjoy your music?
So for this particular album, I incorporated a visual aspect of it. So actually, in the Over, Above, Beyond concert, I will have newly commissioned illustrations with the New York-based artist Moon Sup Shin. So for the piece is Brahms Variations, and he created 12 different illustrations only for this piece, only based on my interpretation. And it will be projected during the concert with the art. And for the listener who cannot come to my concert, and I created Over, Above, Beyond the manual, as if you bought electronic devices and how to use this CD. So what I did was, find an hour and a half from your life and imagine the visual while you listen. And later time, when you see that visual, the nature, as you take a walk, then take a picture with your phone and share hashtag Over, Above, Beyond project on his Instagram or Facebook, and that way we can actually see how everybody hear things differently.
That's great. And so the piano isn't something you just started playing yesterday. I mean, this has been a lifelong instrument for you. You started when you were just 4 years old?
Right. So it's basically, I feel like piano is an extension of my body. That earliest memory I have is playing piano. So feels natural, like I was always swimming or playing piano, similar.
Right, and before your performances, you always step up to the mic and you really kind of bring the audience in. Yeah.
Right. So often in the classical music, this is not normal scene, and even in Carnegie Hall, there was a gorgeous chandelier in the concert hall, and there's a microphone, and they thought, is she gonna sing? They were like. But then I come out and welcome to the concert, and I wanted to share how I feel each piece, and that way, actually, I don't give out written out program for the pieces I'll be playing in before the concert, which is normal. But at the end of the concert, it's another set of the program is given out. So during the concert, they are really kind of more engaged because they don't really have the set up agenda. They just come in and I guide the journey together. And at the end, they given actually because they want the written program.
Right. And is that your main goal as a performer? Tell me about that.
My main goal is to become a mere cup for the music. It's not about me. It's about the music. It's about me to help, if I could, to people who listen to music. Hey, you know, everything is okay and everything will be okay. Without me telling that exactly, somehow they hear it, and you know, it feels lighter today.
Ji and Kim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Now here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Credit checks are a regular part of getting a loan. On Morning Edition, how this process can mistakenly put consumers on a government blacklist. And on Midday Edition, from Latkes to matzo ball soup, we'll explore the foods of Hanukkah. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.